Hi, everybody. I'm super excited to be with you today as at a live stream event. This is a very different format that I'm used to, but it's going to be great. And I'm here to share with you some insights that I've learned over the years, and I hope this will be helpful for you. Wanted to talk a little bit about my mentors out there. Thank you so much for all that you've done. This is a culmination of what I've learned, and I hope that it uplifts you and that new things can arise from it. One of my mentors told me and said that luck is the confluence of opportunity and preparation. Luck is the confluence of opportunity and preparation. What I've come to learn is that leadership is the confluence of luck and vision. And in terms of Six Sigma, we'll get to that later. But those ideas, luck is confluence of opportunity and preparation, leadership, luck, and vision. Let's break that down. Let's get into that and let's understand how that applies to our career, into our future, and for the future of others. So a little bit about me. My name is Terrence Yeo. I started with my doctorate at the University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign. I actually am an IEEE senior member, but I'm also a material scientist. And that's partly because of my first mentor, James Coleman, who encouraged me to join the IEEE Society. And it's been such a great experience. It's been such a great opportunity. I highly encourage any of you who are thinking about being an IEEE member to sign on today. It is an immensely important time for such a society to bring us together and to be of use. I then moved on to the Aerospace Corporation after getting my doctorate, and I held several roles there. I held a role of scientist where I did failure analysis, root cause for microelectronic parts, utilizing instruments like the transmission electron microscope, the SEM, and the focused ion beam in order to solve very, very hard problems. I then moved on to an R&D portfolio manager position where I was responsible for the day-to-day operations of about 200 projects, seeing the entire broad spectrum from soup to nuts of the aerospace research and all the things that are being done to push that envelope into the future. And then lastly, I spent some time as a program manager, managing the day-to-days of a very large satellite system. It was very interesting and very, very fun. And then lastly, in my last couple of months there, I worked as internal consultant, actually, for the company, working in the Office of Strategy, the Office of the CEO, and also corporate communications to be able to push that envelope of what can be done. Recently, I actually have a mid-career pivot into Raytheon Technologies. I'm right now part of Raytheon Intelligence Space, working with JPL to supply the systems engineering needs for this great organization. And it's been really interesting, and I'm learning a ton of things. So let's go on to you, why you're here. We're talking about IEEE USA, which is focused on career development. It's focused on professional development. Let's go through that breakdown of luck. Luck is the confluence of opportunity and preparation. So let's talk about opportunities. What opportunities do we have in the typical landscapes of today? Well, these strategies for success, right, are pretty broad, and I have three of them. The first one is the linear career path, where most aware of this. It's the things that our grandfather and our grandparents and as well as our parents have worked at. You work at a singular company your entire career. You start at the bottom, you work your way up to the top. There are actually some very good advantages of this, and I very much experienced that in my time at the Aerospace Corporation. It's a very established career path. You know where you're going to go, and there's a typical progression in time for your development. It also is very useful because it builds on your knowledge and adds to increasing responsibility from step to step. There's no need to worry about what's next. You kind of know what that's going to be. There's also, unfortunately, some minimal transition costs. You don't need to worry about the next position in that you can always talk to that person or somebody else in that similar position and get information. And you don't have to learn a new culture. You don't have to learn a new process. It's all really there. There are some challenges, though, and the challenges, I like to give a couple metaphors. One is Los Angeles traffic. So when I first came to Los Angeles, one of my friends told me that California is a great place to live, but the problem is everybody else has figured that out, and you always end up waiting in line. You wait in line to get onto the freeway, you wait in line on the freeway, and you wait in line getting off the freeway. And then, of course, doing all the other things. So you have to wait in some ways for openings to appear in order to advance. There's also, in advancement, the Highlander syndrome. And Highlander is a movie series about 20, 30 years ago, talking about there can be only one, right? There's a multitude of people in this very large pyramid structure, and everybody, or a majority or some amount of people, are trying to get to the top, but there are only a diminishing amount of positions available as you get higher and higher up. And so your technical capabilities, your personality may actually not be the distinguishing factors. There may be the other factors that are completely out of your control that affect your future. In terms of the last thing is actually a risk that was brought up by Nassim Taleb, and I call it Nassim Taleb's Turkey. So Nassim Taleb is very popular for the Black Swan, and he had two contrasts. One was the Black Swan, which was those events that are unknowable, unpredictable, that can completely change the manner and way of life. And then there's the Taleb's Turkey, which is something that is very regular and normal throughout the entire time. But at the end, it's Turkey Day, and you come on negative consequences. What I've seen, or what could be a downside, is that being in a single organization for a long period of time gives you a possible institutionalization, in that you're so used to all of those processes that switching organizations may be a challenge. So that's just something to think about in terms of challenges. It's nothing negative. It's just one of the things to be aware of. Overall, you can kind of think in terms of success and in climbing up the ladder. The bias is survivorship, in that the majority of, let's say, senior leaders have come through the organizations working their way up. And you see that if you do a poll of CEOs or of vice presidents of companies. Unfortunately, because of the Highlander syndrome, you end up having only the one that's made it give their story. And so you don't hear the other 100 people who've tried very hard and for one reason or another was not able to make that. So those are things to be considered for the linear career path. Now, there's a secondary career path that has been popularized by Lean-In authors Neil Scovell and Sheryl Sandberg. And Neil actually came to our company and presented thoughts and ideas about her book. And it was very interesting, right? So the Jungle Gym career path is really jumping from organization to organization. And it can be done actually internal to an organization. I experienced that at the Aerospace Corporation. Very, very great, broad experience base. As you saw, scientist, corporate R&D portfolio manager, and then program manager. But you can also do that outside of organizations, which is typical, where you're jumping from one organization's path to another and then to another. Your advantage is that you have, I call this opportunistic acceleration. The holes that you're looking to fill don't actually have to be within your organization or your company. They can be on outside portions, and it allows you to increase your rate of opportunities. This, of course, comes with a little bit of a downside, which is transition costs. You are now changing organizations, cultures, processes, and you will have some slowdown every time you jump in order to catch up and make that happen. There are some challenges, and one of the challenges that I would say is this concept of out of the frying pan and into the fire. As you're moving from one organization to another, just think about it. You're moving from one organization to a completely different organization. There's a reason why they didn't hire internally. And there may be some concerns about what that future may be. Not necessarily the case for every organization, but just something to be aware of, that they weren't able to fill it in their organization. And that's something that's an opportunity to lead and to grow, and just to be aware of. Now, the bias is, and I think this is actually interesting because it was written, by Neil Scovell and Sheryl Sandberg, is that it prioritizes growth overvalue investing, right? You're investing your time in an organization, but in this case, it's a growth stock versus a long-term value stock, right? The value stock has long-term dividends, doesn't grow very much. You need to be in an area where there's massive, rapid growth. And I think Silicon Valley is one of those places that can, that this occurs. So just be aware that the jungle gym career path can work inside an organization. It can also work outside organizations with multiple, but you need to know where your market space is and what industry you're in. There is actually a third path, third strategy for success, and that's the niche career path. This it has other names. It goes by other names like freelancing, like consulting, like starting your own business. You know, a really great way to jump to the very top. You can become CEO, CTO of your own company very quickly. There's some advantages to that, is that you end up setting your own time and terms. So you can decide the terms of your engagement, how much that's worth. With that, any of the other organizations, there's a fair amount of overhead cost, right? In this case, your overhead cost is fairly minimal, but then you're also taking on more risk. It allows you, however, to utilize your unique capabilities to influence and make things happen. But typically, you make things happen in the shadows, kind of quietly. So as coming on as a consultant, they're usually very challenging positions, but you're only there to do the work on the underside, and somebody else gets the credit, which is perfectly fine. But it's one of those things where you have, you know, you're really a gunslinger that has a unique capability that's hired in. You develop this really, really great first run, minimum viable product. And then the next thing you know, 2 months later, the CEO is displaying it on YouTube and really wowing everybody for these amazing capabilities, right? So you make things happen, but you don't necessarily get the credit, but you're also more interested in the challenge and being able to do something amazing. Now, there are challenges to this, of course, and that's the beach whale syndrome. So I had a friend a long time ago share with me that they're working on a particular project, and then they said they were beached. I said, what do you mean by beach? Like on the beach drinking some margaritas, you know, hanging out? And they said, no, not necessarily, like a beached whale, right? The tide has come out, there's not much work, and you have to wait until that next opportunity. So there's problems there. The other one challenge is who moved my cheese, right? You need to be continually up to date with all of your skill sets and be aware of where the industry is moving from day to day. Not necessarily so with the larger organizations, either in the linear path or in the jungle gym path, but definitely you become very specialized in a niche format. I know that there's going to be a webinar on who moved my cheese on Friday. I highly encourage you to watch that. I'm looking forward to it as well. Lastly, in terms of that bias, the bias is that of a soldier of fortune, right? You're looking at the compensation of your time and then delivering that to the best customer at the best time on your terms. But in that, there's limited ability to lead and to really be a leader. You're a kind of a one-man army, which is also very, very good. So in looking at this, I want you to, if you have any questions, this is a live stream, so please feel free to post questions, and Jonathan will be able to post that onto the live stream, and we can answer that. I'll have a little bit of time in this particular portion to answer some questions, but also at the very end, we'll have more opportunities. So let's go and look at the kind of the advantages, disadvantages, so to speak, of that. We're going to go to a drawing board. In this case, we have the linear, the jungle gym, and the niche format. In terms of compensation, I would say linear is typically low, and that's because of the relative overhead costs of the entire organization. And you'll see, I think the rough figure, if you're going to become a consultant, which is what you have in the niche format, you'd be looking at probably double your hourly rate for a niche. So the overhead cost is roughly double your hourly rate. In terms of risk to your personal risk, it's actually pretty interesting. It's actually medium to medium high, and that's because of what we call the Talib's Turkey possibility, that if you get stuck in one organization, you may have trouble if that organization becomes unstable. So that's just a risk to take into account. Now, in terms of the organization itself, their risk is actually very low. because they have you for a period of time in a particular slot, and that is a very good opportunity for them to look at the long term and do succession planning. So the linear path is actually the best for the organization. Now for the jungle gym, your compensation is more medium. And the reason why it's medium is that you have now multiple opportunities to advance. And I think one of my mentors said, if you really want to go for the money and compensation, change jobs every 2 years or so, change organizations. And what that does, it allows you to jump multiple levels and make sure that you're at market value at that point in time. In terms of personal, of course, your risk is now slightly medium because you are jumping from organization to organization. And there may be a possibility where you go to the next jungle gym and fall off that gym. And now you're on the floor and you got to figure out what to do next. There's opportunities where you get onto a particular job, you've quit your other job, and then they say, well, I'm sorry, but this position has now disappeared because we didn't get the contract. I'm sorry. Can you go back, right? We don't need you. So those are risks that you need to take into account. And then in terms of organization, right, it's somewhat medium on both sides. They're getting a win by bringing on somebody who's outside the organization, but they also don't know what they're getting. There's always a reason why you're leaving. What those reasons are need to be vetted and understood. Now, in terms of niche, it's actually interesting. You want to say high, I would say D for diversified. Typically, when you're in this format, you now have to diversify your portfolio of work. And so it's on you. Where typically in a linear organization or even a jungle gym organization, they are handling that themselves. So you don't have those issues to worry about. Now, in terms of the personal risk, your risk is also diversified because now there are opportunities, multiple opportunities to make this happen. And in terms of organizational risk, their organizational risk actually is low. And the reason why it's low is that it's low on both sides of the equation. You have an organization that hires you, it's actually very low risk. They don't have to take you on for long term. They don't have to worry about your health benefits or any other kind of fringe benefits. They're worried about, can you complete that job in that period of time? And let's just pay you what you need to pay. On your side, your organizational risk is low in that you are a one-man show, and those are opportunities that you have to meter yourself. So it's low in some ways that you don't have overhead, but then of course you don't have somebody working for you to be able to find those jobs and positions. So hope this is an interesting concept in terms of the three main areas. It's actually pretty interesting because it corresponds to Porter's competitive strategies, where you have a niche or premium model. You have kind of a modular, and you have basically linear is the premium model. A jungle gym is the modular, and niche is really the low cost. The low cost model. So that's niche. So I encourage you to look into Porter's competitive strategies. That's a very interesting methodology to think through. So now that you know strategies, let's look at tactics. And I like to go top down. Tactics can be used in many, many different formats. And in some ways, how you do things is really dependent on your tactics. And it can be used in any of those three formats. One thing is in terms of learning, right? So you have, or developing a project, it's very similar to learning new things. And the typical format is the sigmoid learning curve, or the S curve. This learning is very similar to chemical reactions, where things start very slowly in the beginning, but because of exponential growth, you have a very massive, large spike in performance. And then as the reagents start to run out inside your area, it starts to peak off and slow down, right? This shows in terms of learning, because there's less information to be gained once you've learned all of it. We know this is the norm of today's education. The learning time frame, I want to say, is variable, and it's really dependent on your focus and priorities. So the good news is, the harder you work, the more and faster you can get to where you want to be. And that's really the early bird gets the worm. But when you're talking about innovation, that's slightly different. And the reason is that innovation, when you're working at the state of the art, the learning is dependent on developing new knowledge. The knowledge is not there. You have to mine it. You have to develop it. And for that matter, you're really looking at stops and starts. So it's not a curve, so to speak. It's really a staccato change of states from one to another. So these frequent stops and starts are dependent on the insights and experimentation that you have from day to day. And it requires developing new knowledge, and then most importantly, adapting knowledge from other fields. And it's actually really interesting in terms of my experience with innovation. I find that if I work on different projects at the same time that are completely orthogonal to each other, the insights that cross over each of those boundary crossing insights are far more valuable than if I just work through and try to solve a problem all by itself. It takes way longer. Just like having a second view into what's going on, you can kind of see that I'm not actually inside my home and I'm just putting a nice background in the back. I'm actually outside working on with you and enjoying nature and enjoying really the Six Sigma that is nature. That things are unpredictable, that most of the time we as humans try to constrain that to be predictable. But in doing so, we're missing things out. And I'll talk to that later on. So how do we apply S-curves? How do we apply the innovation curve, so to speak, for our futures? Well, in this case, we're going to talk about basic project management, right? So typically in typical S-curve, you can then put them together in a format such that there's a beginning and there's an end. And once you're finished with that end, you start over with the new one. The 3-minute egg rules apply in this case, in which you may have a set amount of time for this project, and so it starts and then it ends. But in this case, there's a little bit of inefficiency in the use of your cognitive resources, because as you're starting off a new project, that beginning, the reason why your productivity is slow is because you're spending a lot of time trying to figure out those processes, trying to learn, and you're really applying a lot of the unknowns and trying to get those solved. Once you're in the format of really rapid growth, there's not a lot of cognitive resources. It's just execution efficiency. And at the very end, there's really not a lot of cognitive resources either. You're really just cleaning up and making sure that things are going well. So there's an alternative method, and I think it was talked about, and I call it S-curve chaining because of an Accenture article that talked about this quite a few years back. If you look up Accenture and S-curve chaining, you'll find a PDF where they talk a lot about this more. And it's really not working in a batch process, which is what we talked about earlier in project management. This is more of a continuous production process where you phase the development activities to maximize the cognitive resourcing. So once you've gotten into the execution efficiency, you then start another project in that allows you to then take your cognitive resources and apply it there for that brief startup period, such that when you've ended your first project, you're now in the execution phase of your second project, and you're beginning the ideation phase of your third project. And so by doing so, you are able to compress the time in roughly half of that and be able to do chaining that improves that performance. Of course, there's downsides, and one of them is that you may saturate your cognitive capabilities pretty quickly. There's another thing. So we're doing this in terms of known things that are going on at any given time. What can you do when you don't know what's going to be next? Well, it's pretty typical. What you do is you do S-curve stacking. And I talked about the cognitive resourcing. So you're looking at this point and you're probably thinking, wait a minute, you're now doing 3 different projects at the exact same time. What's going on here? Well, what you do is you stack orthogonal activities. And this is really a typical methodology when, let's say, a particular program doesn't know where to go. They try 3 different things. They have 3 different teams. Let them all run with all the same resources and see who actually benefits and actually wins. When there's a winner, they let the winners ride. Now, in this case, right, failure is an option. In fact, it's celebrated because 2/3 of the projects will fail with the hope that one of those really makes it. Right. So what you do is you stack orthogonal activities. How do you do that for your personal work? You have to do it because you're only one person, you stack orthogonal ideas and concepts. So maybe you have a project that's going on at work, you have another project going on at home, and maybe another project going on in your community. This allows you to stack these and not have issues with conflicts of your cognitive resources. So now you can say, what about S-curve stacking and S-curve chaining? That's where the innovation happens, right? Remember those stops and starts in terms of growth. To help smooth that out in order to get continual performance, what you do is you stack multiple projects that are orthogonal to each other, let the winners ride, and as you're going towards that, then try a totally new set of orthogonal, right? So we're going in multiple dimensions at this point. So I'll give you an example of what I ended up doing, and it's really crucial because it's not about you being overworked and trying everything at once. You're being very methodical in stacking orthogonal concepts because that allows you to not get burnt out and allows you to expand your bandwidth, because that's what our brains are really capable of doing. We have multiple areas of our brain: a left brain, a right brain, a frontal, and a rear. Multiple areas, and you want to exercise all of those, but not all at the same time. But you can kind of move them so that you don't have all of your cognitive resources at one particular point at any given time. So one example was I was working on developing the intern program at the company. It was going through its mid phase where things were really getting exciting, but there was not a lot of cognitive resources needed. So immediately in my head, I was thinking, okay, well, what's the next step? What can we do? We've got the intern set up. Now we need to work on the existing scientists and engineers. Let's get them excited about working at the company. So I started developing an innovation incubator for that company, worked 3 months with legal, started developing the concepts, getting buy-in from senior management. And then as we're going through the intern program, we then start the innovation incubator and start to invigorate the mid-careers on developing new technology after hours. So we're working on that. And as that is being kicked off, another bell goes through my head and says, no, you got to think about other things. What about the long-term benefit of the organization? And that's where the concept of compact mentoring came about, where I'm able to mentor somebody in about an hour and a half in 3 30-minute sessions that really gets to the heart of the person and where they want to go. And so helped develop that, made it scalable, and then started bringing in other people to be able to work this as a multiple at the organizational level. So as I'm doing that, of course, that is one particular thing. That's the community portion. I'm also then on the other side working, managing a program, doing a highly technical failure analysis where it was very ambiguous. It's very ambiguous in terms of the solution, and you had to make that 60% judgment call. And at the same time, working my personal life and seeing all of those things in terms of my children growing up and keeping relationships going, all of those things. So by having them in orthogonal formats, you're able to do a lot of different things at the same time. You just have to structure it and be very deliberate in terms of how you structure these things. So what are the downsides? And I'm going to focus on this concept that every optimized system has some innate fragility. And so I think we've seen this in the COVID-19 era, where supply chains that have been touted of having just-in-time manufacturing are now starting to see the fragility of that particular methodology. It's great when things are all humming and working, but when you have that outside Six Sigma event that comes in, now everything starts to break down. One example recently is, the concept of eggs, right? Eggs typically cost about $2 to $3 per dozen for eggs. Sometimes at Costco you can get it for 50 cents an egg, but 50 cents a dollar a dozen or so. But having your own chickens actually costs a lot. It costs about $2 to $3 an egg. And how does that work? Well, first you have to feed them. Secondly, you have to worry about what to do, where they're housed. They can't just walk around your backyard. You need to buy a coop. You start to build things, right? So that adds to expense. And then there's a time in terms of maintenance, in terms of developing that. So this is completely unoptimized, the system of having your own chickens at home, but it's also very robust. I think you see that in systems engineering, that we never try to optimize a system to the complete end, because by doing so, what you end up doing is that you end up creating fragility in the system. So just something to think about. Always make sure that you have sufficient margin and you're not optimizing your system to the complete end. And I started seeing that actually in my time with driving, actually, with the commute. I had no issues with the work and enjoyment of that. It was merely the increase of time of the commute. It started about 1 hour and 40 minutes when I first started working, and it ended up being 3 hours round trip at the end. So much so that I end up making a YouTube series called Yo on the Go. And I have 50 episodes for season 2. We're about halfway through, and I'll send you a link on that. But I found it. I basically made one video a week for a year by being on the road. At the same time, my children are starting to grow up, and they're going into club soccer and other activities. And so my weekends started to expand in terms of the time. I found that all of my margins were taken away, and that seriously, I had to change the way my life worked. So I found that my commute life balance was not working out, and so I had to make a change. Now that change, you can say is a good thing or a bad thing, but it's really a tailored change to your specific life and where things are in your life. I think that's very important, in that we're always talking about improvement, talking about how to do better, but always make sure you have margin, because that margin will account for things that are outside of your control that will happen. So let's talk about switching strategies, right? The strategies themselves, now that you see them, they're just merely strategies. There's really not one good strategy over the other. They're really tailored to who you are and where you are in your time and in your life. There are certain ones that work very well and others that won't work very well. It really is a dialogue. It really is taking a lot of introspection and trying to figure things out. Now, with that, I mentioned earlier about leadership. And I talked about that leadership is the confluence of luck and vision. Now, luck, I think we've talked about luck. It's not really what I'm saying, being lucky. It's really about having opportunity, which in these strategies, and then having preparation, which I'm talking about in terms of the S-curve chaining, S-curve stacking, and innovation. Let's move on to vision. See, vision, I see, is the confluence of fulfillment and purpose. And what is that? Because what we see is that the career is not your purpose. Working at a company or striking it out on your own is not the purpose of your life. There's a higher purpose, and there's so much more to life than just our jobs. I think we're seeing that right in this COVID-19 era, where our lives are being turned upside down, and it gives us space in some ways to think. Yes, a job is very necessary. I know that a lot of people are out of a job right now, and it's very important to find that sustainment for the day-to-days, absolutely. But even if you don't have a job, take this time to think and to say and evaluate, what is that purpose and what makes me fulfilled? And I think that's a very important thing about leadership, because I said leadership is a confluence of luck, which we've broken down, and vision. See, the confluence of purpose and fulfillment is vision. Now, wait a minute, what's that about, right? So you have a leader, and a leader provides vision to everyone else. But what is that? What is that vision, right? That vision is actually something very interesting. It's about value. Vision is about value. It's about providing value to the people that follow you. Now, what is that about? Well, think about it. I was thinking about, YouTube. I was doing a search and saying, okay, well, what are the most, things that are going on and most watched things in YouTube? Yes, you have these music videos. Yes, you have famous stars, entertainment. Yes. But if you look, there are certain things that are kind of just blow my mind that get millions and millions of views, like how to drain your brake oil, your brake fluid, right? There's a video out there by a parts company that has 2.2 million views. 2.2 million views on how to drain your brake fluid. Now, this is really just a plastic tube and a Coke bottle. That's all they've done. And 2.2 million views. They have almost 1 million followers, right? So why? Why are they following? Why are they being followed? Why are they having so many views? Because they're providing value to the viewers. So leadership is really about providing not value to the leader or saying, oh, I value that leader. It's about providing value to the followers themselves. So what would your career like, right? Because you're thinking about advancement. You're saying, okay, I'm going to try the linear path, or maybe I'll do a little bit of jungle gym. And now that I've done the jungle gym, I'm going to go do niche or whatever, right? You're thinking about purpose for yourself, but that's not leadership, right? You're getting to the top. Let's say you become senior VP. What are you really providing? You're providing value to the people that follow you. Otherwise, you just have a position that's out there that people are trying to follow because that's the office of leadership. I think that's a very crucial difference, is that what if your career would look like if you focused on purpose and purpose itself? So I'm going to talk about value. And I think personally, what I found is what makes you valuable to others is the resilience to failure. And I think a lot of us are good at failing. You're very good at failing. You just need to know what particularly you're good at failing at that other people are not good at failing at, right? Are you good at at getting rejection all the time? Are you good at being ridiculed and, just shaking it off? What about dog work? What about working day and night on things that don't really seem that too important? You don't mind that? What if you have a difficult customer and you're just really good at working that difficult customer, right? What if you've been called incompetent and that doesn't really bother you? Or what if you've been called not intelligent? Does that bother you? If you find those things that you can fail at time and time again, and you're not afraid to keep on going and trying, those are the things that are of value for other people so that they can then pay you to do those things. So just something to think about, because you think about this, right? We're creating value. You're really leading. You're really leading and encouraging others throughout that time. I think assuming someone else's risk is that mark of value. I see my throughout the time as I started working more and more, I started seeing my time go away. I took pride in working on my lawn to be able to manage the grounds, but quite frankly, it wasn't really cutting up to snuff. Particularly, my wife was saying, "Oh, it really needs to be mowed." And I'm like, "Oh, I'll get to it." Eventually, I hired a gardener to mow the lawn, and it made my wife very happy because it was well done, and also made me very happy because I've now seen the value and I've put the risk, my own personal risk, onto someone else, and I gladly pay them that. So that's really a premise of a business, right? Providing a service or product that provides value and taking on that risk of failure, right? If you fail at mowing the lawn, it's now on the gardener, not on myself, right? So somebody else is taking that risk and they're getting paid for that. So you got to think, what kind of risk are you willing to take? And when you fail at that risk, can you keep up and keep on going? Now that comes into that concept of what's money at that point in time, right? Accumulating money now is really holding on to someone else's debt to you for doing something for them, for taking on risks that they didn't want to take on or they were not able to take on. That really starts blowing your mind in terms of, the dollars that are in your pocket. The concept of money supply, money velocity, right, takes a whole new meaning. You're really moving debt around. You're moving other people's debt to each other faster and faster and faster. So now that we think about that, I want to talk about leadership, right? A leader gets followers not because they're looking at a new idea. They're really providing vision, and that vision is giving a place of fulfillment and purpose to the follower themselves. And I think that's the important crux, right? That you have to be a leader in a Six Sigma world. And quite honestly, the world is always Six Sigma. We just never knew it for these short periods of time. To be a leader in the Six Sigma world, you need to have luck, which is the confluence of opportunity and preparation. You need to have vision, which provides value to the people following you. Good, deep, real value. And that is purpose and fulfillment. So let's say I'm going to give an example now that we've talked about leadership, we've talked about value, we've talked about money. I'll give you an example for you to think about. What if in this completely new world, somebody develops an article that is of extreme value to you, immense value to the entire world, such that you, as the cost, which you're more than willing to pay, you need to give all of your money to that individual, just one person, all of your money to that individual except for $1. and we'll say $1 for this time being. So now everybody has $1. And this individual takes all of those dollars, prints them out, puts them in a pile, and burns it. Completely burns it. Doesn't start a foundation, doesn't spend it on themselves, just burns it. What just happened? Some people will say, well, that's the craziest thing. Why would anybody do that? Another person may start digging deeper and saying, you know what? That's debt forgiveness. What I would say is that that's sacrificial leadership. That's sacrificial leadership. Now, if you think about this, I want you to leave with one last question I have for you. Is that, what are you going to do with that dollar? If that person is sacrificial leadership, what are you going to do with that dollar? So I hope this was helpful for you. This actually comes into the Q&A portion. I hope it's given you some things to think about. I'm always about conversation and continuing the conversation because I truly believe that everything that I've said is a glass house. I just build a lot of glass houses and I give you rocks. And I want you to throw rocks at this because what that does is that what's left standing is the idea. It is a collaboration between you and me. So I encourage you to connect with me right now if there are any particular questions. And yes, indeed, those are chickens that are barking in the backyard. One of them has just laid an egg. I encourage you to connect with me on LinkedIn. The QR code is here, as well as the link to the vlog on YouTube. So with that, I just want to thank you for your time.
Folks, we have time for a few questions. Go ahead and ask them in the comment section and we'll load them onto the screen for Dr. Yo to answer.
Okay, question from Peter. Hi, Peter. So in the COVID-19 economic reality, how does this challenge your strategies for finding opportunities and future unemployment? So I think there's a lot that needs to be said. I think in terms of Maslow's hierarchy of needs, if you're unemployed right now, my heart goes out to you. This is a very crucial time. I'm thankful that the United States government has done a little to help, but it's of course never enough. But the great part about America is that we're individuals and we do our best to help one another. I think there are a couple things you can do. One is that continue to be engaged with your societies. I always encourage my mentees to join a technical society like IEEE or some other trade group. They are really the guilds of today. And I think it's extremely crucial for you to be part of that. The second thing is you need to try all avenues at the same time. So look at the linear career path, look at the niche, look at the jungle gym path, but also think about striking it out on your own. I would say at this point in time, this is the best time to start your own business. And I fully believe this. This is the best time to start your own business because as a leader, you need to be thinking not what's going on now. You need to be thinking 6 months, 12 months, 2 years into the future, and then plotting what those things will look like, and then backdating that to what are you going to do today. So I think this is an amazing opportunity to start your own business and try to find what people need today because the cheese has moved. In fact, the cheese is gone, right? And we're trying to figure out, well, what are we going to eat next? And this is where true innovation, this is where we're truly alive in some ways because we're not bound by patterns and patterns of thoughts. So that would be my answer to that. And Peter, please connect with me over LinkedIn and let's continue this discussion. Thanks. Six Sigma means no defects. Yes, that's true. It's kind of a play on words. Six Sigma, of course, in the industry is very much about reducing the number of defects that are out there. It's really about controlling and constraining that. It is a little bit of a play on words because my hope is to say that the world is actually a Six Sigma event. Things happen all the time that can completely change the way the environment works. Just like, the chickens that are making noise right now, right? They only did that at the end. I can't plan that. And in many ways, I purposely did this outside to showcase that things cannot be controlled. So I would say that the Six Sigma is once you start to constrain and control a certain portion, everything outside of that portion becomes uncontrollable. And so now you have to balance which ones are worse. Can I really control this section at the risk of now having complete anarchy come out on the other side? And I think that's where the interplay between optimization and robustness comes into play. The best, most robust vehicle is a Hummer in some ways, but its gas mileage is horrendous. Now, an extremely high efficiency vehicle works well until you're trying to pull something really, really important. You can't do it. So you need to have that balance between efficiency and robustness. Hi, Neil. Can Taguchi method be applied for Six Sigma? Well, the Taguchi method, and if some of you may not know, Taguchi method is really doing an analysis of design of experiments where you're trying various paths. In some ways, you're doing that by working orthogonal projects. And I mentioned that in terms of S-curve stacking. You're really trying orthogonal things that don't have any concerns with each other, but you may actually get some synergies where you have, let's say, 10% on one particular improvement on one particular path and maybe 30% on another. But the combination of that, because you are now in 3 space, right, may give you now a completely new solution that has benefit. I think those are new ideas that, quite honestly, AI can't do today because it's learning on the given trade space and phase space. But we as humans can really make that next step, next generation thought, and really say, no, there's a new experiment that I need to try out there. So thanks for that question, Anil. So while Kadar asked what optimizing any work, what measures do we follow? I would say there's an 80-20 rule. The Pareto principle works very well for that, in that you want to optimize to 80%. It always leaves some wiggle room. There's always something that something else can be improved. And the reason is that as we as people work on our own singular tasks and mindsets, we're just one set. We only have our own tunnel vision. We want to leave that 20% of wiggle room so that somebody else can come in from a different direction and maybe push that idea to a completely different area. So I would say you want to optimize 80% and leave 20% on the table. Hi, David. Very, very good question about mentorship and self-reflection. I would say that your mentors are actually all around you. You just don't know it. People always start to think of this idea that I need to find a mentor. That person has to have these qualifications. They need to be in this particular organization because that's where I want to go. Quite honestly, I did not know that I would be working for a completely different company a year and a half, 2 years ago. No idea. So how can you kind of jump to that set and say, I want to be a mentor. I need to find a mentor outside of my organization. I think you need to think more broad, open up that aperture on who your mentors are. In some ways, my chickens are my mentors. I learn about their daily needs and tasks right now and what they're thinking about. Those are opportunities. So I would say don't constrain yourself, but also I think connect. And I think we're in a regime in our lives in which there's a cacophony, right, of the crows singing, the chickens clucking. There's a lot of noise out there, but there's a lot of opportunities to connect and meet with people and really be real with them. So even if we're apart physically, we can still, again, it's not social distancing. We are social people. That will destroy us. We need to practice physical distancing, but be socially connected. So in whatever format that allows you to, I encourage you to connect with me, and let's continue that conversation. Thanks, David.
All right. Thank you, Dr. Yo, for joining us today, and thank you, everyone, for tuning in. This webinar will be archived on our Facebook page at IEEE USA for viewing afterwards. Check it daily for updates on future webinars, and we hope you all have a great day.
Thanks. Bye.